Welcome to the Nightmare Stories of the Other Side podcast. Tonight we are joined by Kara Phillip, who has a history background as well as a background in the paranormal field. She is the co-host of the podcast Into the Obscure and the Obscurity of Maximum Security. She's also spent several years as a historical tour guide at the old Joliet prison in Joliet, Illinois. Welcome in, Kara.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for being on our episode.
So old Juliet prison, that had to be a blast.
I loved my time there. I originally started, I fell in love with it when I was a little kid actually. And when I got to go actually volunteer there and be part of it as an adult, that was just, I don't know if I knew at the time it was a dream come true, but it really was because I was always fascinated with it. And I got to be part of a group of people that cleaned it and made it ready for tours and guests and everything to share the history. And eventually I got to be part of the paranormal tours and, teaching people about the site and everything. And that was a fantastic time. I truly valued that.
Yeah. I've always been big into history myself ever since I was a kid. And I've been on our historical board for a better chunk of my life. So, yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, well, maybe we ought to start with the history of the old Joliet prison.
So it was built in, or I should say opened 1858, 1856 it started. And it was quarried from the quarries across the street. It's made of Joliet limestone. And if you live in the area, we have a lot of things that are built out of it. So my cellar is a very old house. It's an old cellar to an old house, and it is the same Joliet limestone.
Mm.
So we see a whole lot of it, or when you go dig in your backyard, you find big chunks of it. So it was built out of that limestone and built to look like a castle. Basically, I'm not saying they said I want it to look like a castle, and it was the same architect for the admin building as our water tower place in downtown Chicago.
That's
And
cool.
so they look very similar. I was actually just in the city. I was just at Water Tower Place, and it always puts a little smile on my face how very similar it is. Same architect, same limestone, and it was what survived the Great Chicago Fire. So it's all very part of our history in the area. It's a maximum or was a maximum security prison and was home to a lot of people throughout the years. And, certainly plenty of people that probably shouldn't have been incarcerated or maybe shouldn't have been incarcerated for quite so long or under those conditions. But certainly plenty of people that probably deserved it too.
Mm.
There's a lot of gorgeous building. I say gorgeous because I love, 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 love like the decay and, all of that. A lot of gorgeous buildings on the grounds and a whole lot of stories, in there. Across the street, altogether it's a 16-acre complex, but there's a major road in between.
Yep.
Across the street is the annex. It's, known as the women's prison. For a little while, it was the women's prison. For a little while, it was, processing. For a little while, towards the very end of its life, the annex was for the, I forgot the name, but just like extreme blank deviant, since we have a kid here, people that it's not safe to let out in society around people were housed there. So they later moved to another prison further down Southern Illinois. And so the annex now is leased by 13th Floor. So it's a functional haunted house, like with haunt actors and everything,
Yeah.
but also haunted. So that's the annex side. And the main side is still run by a museum in the area.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned limestone. That immediately brings to mind the stone tape theory.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are not familiar with that theory, it's that uh, certain stones, um, And limestone is on that list. Quartz is a big one as well. Granite is mostly quartz. But that those stones hold the memory of a place and perhaps the energy of a place. And they might even be a battery for spirits to draw energy from.
Hmm. Yeah, I do. I truly believe that they can draw energy from them.
Well, and it's interesting too, because that that space, so a lot of our roads, and probably by you guys too, probably all over the country, it's probably not unique. We had a pretty solid Native American population once upon a time in
Hmm.
the area, and Archer or becomes Collins, becomes, different names as it goes down the line. By me, it's called State Street. It was one of the old paths used by the Native Americans. So not only is it a, quarried, from a quarry across the street is where all the stone came from. It was also a major road, and there's also water, like water that flows underneath it and everything too. That's one of the reasons it was chosen, was because they were able to have a cistern there and there's able to be water there. So some of the things that are more underground, the tunnels are long flooded because the water table is high enough there. So they didn't have to, when you build a maximum security prison a long time ago, you don't want to have to constantly be opening the gates for water and things like that.
Yeah.
So there was water, there was the stone, and then this ancient trail, essentially, part of it. So that's part of why, and aside from just, everything that happens in a maximum security prison over the course of, really longer than we can comprehend, there's a lot attached to it and a
Mhm.
lot
Sure.
of energy.
How many deaths do you know? Do you have an idea how many deaths there were in there?
That ever stayed there, that were ever incarcerated there.
Yeah.
Who knows? Because, records over time are not necessarily pulled from. There's down at, like, in Springfield, there are a lot of records, but that's where you usually have to go to count. But even if you say at any given moment, there was supposed to be maximum two per cell. That was not the case. It was definitely way overpopulated. That's why another major state prison was built very close by, Stateville. When that opened, like in the 20s, 30s, Old Joliet was supposed to have closed, but they said, oh, darn, we can't actually do that. We don't have enough beds for these people to remain incarcerated as sentenced. So there were two maximum security prisons active very close to each other for a long time. You could actually, if it wasn't for trees, you could probably like see them, across the
Yeah.
valley from each other. So I couldn't tell you how many over time. And then too, you factor in, it was also processing. NRC, the Northern Reception Center, did move to Stateville eventually, but it was, do you count the people that were just processed through there? Because that's a short stay. That's usually, it's supposed to be less than a couple weeks, but sometimes it's a lot
Mhm.
longer. So it's, a lot of people over time for varying levels.
Sure. Any notable inmates?
I plenty. So the one that you hear about on TV shows, but really didn't actually, was Gacy. He just passed through. The warden at the time, so one very popular TV show says he spent some time there. But the warden actually at the time said, oh no, this is going to be way too much. We're not having him come in here. And having that, we're not bringing that on. He's going to go, we'll do the processing we have to do here, but he's going. So he did not actually stay. So people will talk about, there's, a very big show that said, yeah, we saw his ghost. He's there. He was never actually there. Um, Richard Speck spent quite a while there. He actually worked in the hospital, ironically enough, and he eventually died there. And his ashes went somewhere, nowhere, nobody knows.
Hmm.
They on purpose
Interesting.
did not want them to go someplace because his sister was alive at the time, didn't want the grave or the, deposition of the remains uh, either worshipped or desecrated. So there was a priest that took the ashes and never told anybody where he put them. They're somewhere apparently in Joliet. is what we hear, but it could be anywhere, right? Who
So,
knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
so for those who aren't familiar with Spec, what are some of his greatest hits, to put it lightly?
He's the student nurse killer. He was a Oh, I'd have to pull up my co-host Rob. We went on a little tour near his house one day in Spec. The murders happened not far from where he lived. Um, I forgot the school they went to, and he would just go crazy that I can't remember this right now. But he was worked on the boats. And he ended up walking, would go to the bar nearby, would end up walking, and went to where some student nurses were, a dorm basically, and killed a bunch of them. There was
Huh.
one survivor, and so that was it was apparently it was some very traumatic deaths, and I mean, that's horrible too, to go kill these student nurses.
Yeah.
So that was, very well known in our area for quite a while. I recorded, like, as he was telling the story and we were going through the house, by the location. I should put that out on my TikTok one of these days. I still haven't edited it, but because he tells the story really well. So I should finally get to that. When you do so much all the time, you get all this content, and it's
Right.
hard to keep up with.
Hmm.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the editor for our team, and that is definitely the case. Hours and
It's
hours of
hard.
footage
Yeah, it's
and
really
minutes
hard.
make the cut. Yeah.
Hmm. And you got to have some patience. And sometimes I don't always have that patience or time. So sometimes I just hold on to things.
Mm, yeah, I got a few things from past investigations that I just hold on to too.
And you never know. One day they'll come back out like you were talking about it. So I'll probably go dig in and, get it together, because he does tell the story so well, and it's so cool to go see it. So
No, for
I'll probably
sure.
get it out on our TikTok.
Mm.
So what's the craziest thing at Joliet that you've ever experienced?
Um, so the list is, I always say it's kind of like the 28 Days Haunted, concept, like the Warren concept, if you spend time there. So the more time we spent there, the more we were familiar. And I think, God, on any given day, I'll come up with a different thing that I say was the coolest, because I mean, there were so many cool things that happened. Um, One of my favorites, two things, and I think it's just because they're funny. So I got a kick out of it because they're funny. One of them, we got to participate in when there were rentals, so celebrity rentals and, different tours coming through and help out with the guests. And on one of those tours, actually, I have two stories for one of those tours, but on one of those tours, we're using, I think, just the Necrophonic app with, with the person. And we were in West Seg. So segregation, they tend to be pretty interactive and pretty like talkative, if, with tools and everything. So they said, my name, my now co-star, and one of my best friends, Rob's name, and Nikki, one of our other, friends, and that was part of the tour guides. She goes, "Hey, what's my name?" And so she's short, and Rob's very tall, and Rob calls her fun size because she's just cute and little. And so they didn't say Nikki, they said short. And so like we loved that because it was funny. We're like, yes, thank you. But also it showed like that intelligence to be like, that's the joke that we're going to be in on, that we're going to get a kick out of. So that was a good one. Another one with an Estes method. So we all kind of had our ghosts that we maybe had some connection to for whatever reason. And so mine, there was a guard, and somebody was doing the Estes method with a medium that was there as a tour guide. And that guard came through, and the guard liked me, did not like Rob. And that's, reasonable.
Yeah.
And so, but it was cool because, and this is, I think, why I love the Estes method too. This was the time I fell in love with it. So this woman that was participating, that was helping out, of course, eyes covered, couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything. And basically told Rob to leave the gallery. Like, didn't care for him. You go. I don't want to do this with you. And so he said, okay, fine, and he left the gallery. He didn't. He actually stopped probably 10 feet short of the door. Honestly, even if you're looking at him, because it's such a far distance, it's in the dark, basically, you can't even, you'd be hard pressed to tell, even looking at him, especially not, the person wearing the goggles and all covered up looking down. They can't see him. So he stopped and it said, no, keep going, get out. And I was like, see, that's cool. Like, that's so cool.
Uh,
It's stuff like that. Like, not just a big loud noise, not just something, hearing footsteps, which is also cool. Like, there's so many cool things
Right.
like that, but it's those like intelligent interactions that you're like, stop. And then I think my favorite, because it was the funniest, we were one day after a cleaning day, we went to go check out the bathrooms, one of the showers. So if prisons, showers are not known to be the most peaceful, safe places in an
mhm.
active jail or prison situation. Not as much jail, but I think still more the prisons. But anyway, so and we got to kick at them because they didn't have windows. They were dark. They're not part of the tour. It's not something that we even got to see all the time, even as the ones doing the work. So whenever we got to check it out, it was kind of nice. And we would check it out periodically because people could still break into the prison. It wasn't, they really still don't really monitor it too well. And so we would, even just for safety, go check these areas that are not normally checked out. So we checked it out, and we were just kind of, I left, I think I left just the Necrophonic app on, and we were just talking, and I was recording anyway, and we were just hanging out. And when you get a bunch of friends together, you guys probably know, even if you mean to be investigating or mean to be like gathering evidence, you just sometimes end up talking to your friends and just hanging out,
Mhm.
right?
Yep,
So,
for sure.
and it was nothing formal anyway. So we really were just there checking out the showers, making sure everything was fine. So Rob and I were like across the shower room from each other, and some of our other friends were there. And I was recording, and I heard and I always laugh because to me it was just the funniest reaction we both had. I just hear a big, like, and I thought, oh, why is he being so gross over there? Like, what is he doing? I didn't even say anything because I was like, Rob, like, stop being disgusting, but whatever, and and we all were, and he kind of said something else, and then we all real silent, and then he goes, did you just breathe? He thought I did it and thought I was being like gross and disgusting, and I was like, no. So we got such a kick out of, like, we just thought it was so funny that neither one of us did it. We all heard it, which is incredible when you all can actually hear it with your ears. And then it
Right.
was on the recording too. So I just thought that was so funny because the reaction, just us as humans with each other, we
Yeah.
were just like disgusted with each other because it was a gross, weird breath. Like, it was just gross. And so we just each thought the other was being a disgusting person, and it wasn't. It was a ghost, and that was fun. So it was, in the end, it was one of my favorite places ever to be and spend time and immerse in. So everything about it was just truly delightful. So any interactions I just loved. Sometimes it like scares you, and I like to involuntarily run. I try not to, but I do, so, but but those are like my favorite because it just showed like a lot of intelligence, but also then the breath. I just get such a kick out of because we all actually heard it, and just our reactions at each other, I think, were the highlight
Yeah.
for me.
Well, it's kind of like an incident that happened last night when during one of our Estes sessions, it's like the spirit we're communicating with called me out by name and told me to leave.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's like then I gave my camera to Natalie and just walked off. But yeah, it told me to leave. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, and then as soon as I got the camera, it said my name, but it didn't really tell me what it wanted from me. I don't think.
I
That's
don't remember
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I remember that.
And back in Jericho, the spirits were able to produce all of our names
Yep.
except our team member Katie, which
And-
later in the
and
night when
Carrie.
I was up in the attic with Katie doing a small Estes method, they called her Hannah, and she pulled those headphones off and she says, Laurel, you don't know this, but my first name is actually Hannah, and I go by my middle name, Katie.
Really? That's super cool.
Uh,
But yeah,
I
like,
like that a lot.
but yeah, during that the one Esther session where it got everybody named, it like nailed Natalie down to a T, hair color, what she
Yeah,
was
like it was
wearing,
describing
everything.
everything I was wearing and like what I looked like. It was kind of creepy, but it was really cool.
See, yeah, like it's cool, or there's at the prison there were definitely doppelgangers, and that was that should be creepy, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not supposed to like that. But that was just so cool. Like it's just um I learned a while ago when we talk about like you see so many ways that the paranormal is presented, whether it's the TV shows that are popular
mhm.
or even the YouTubes and everything. There's so much like, oh, I'm so scared. This is serious and scary and terrible. And
Demonic.
I learned along the way that that's not at all how I approach it. Like, we wouldn't all be doing this if we thought it was so serious and
Right.
scary. And like, let's be honest, so I don't ever like to present it that way. I mean, if I am scared, I'll tell you, and if there's, a couple of times, something scared me, but usually it's because I thought it was a living person, because that's a lot scarier than a ghost. But
Mhm.
I no, I find it always like infinitely delightful, and even if it does scare me, how exciting, because how many things are actually scary? Not that many. Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's so cool, that there is that interaction, because why else are we doing it?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like I've only been doing this since March, and it's like the first investigation I went on to, it's like on the way home, I'm like, okay, when do I get to do this again? It was just like
Hmm.
I was just so excited and enthralled with it. I'm like, okay, I need to do this again and again and again.
Mhm.
Well, and I just love my
Yeah,
dusty,
throw a REM
abandoned,
pod
creepy
down so I can
places.
feel something.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just love being in those spaces too. Like
Yeah.
I mean, even if nothing happens, I'm obsessed with just like these dark, creepy places. And I
Mhm.
love a good peely paint and everything. Um, I find it quite delightful. Like whether something happens or not, I just love it. Send
Yeah,
me
it's
into a
like
creepy basement. Thank you.
Yeah.
my first investigation. I just went with a group of friends that had started up a team. So it's like I didn't have any equipment and was just there, and it's just like this is so cool, and yeah, I loved it.
And
Yeah.
but I think that's the coolest. Like, no, I'm not big on equipment. I do love, like, I'm the first to say, like, I don't love equipment. I don't like all the, whatevers. But when I hang out with like Pete Grace, he has, tons of stuff because he runs his high school groups and everything. So he has a ton of equipment, not just one of something, usually a lot of something. I am the first to be like, let me play with everything on your table and let's see what it can do. So as much as I say, like, I don't love equipment, I like to just, rely on myself. But when there are fun toys, I do enjoy them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like REM pods.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a resident REM pod enthusiast. You've also got a thing for music boxes, it would
Yeah.
seem.
Yeah. That's a newfound one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the music boxes because there is just something about when you're in a dark space and
Mhm.
all of a sudden this creepy music box starts like over there. I just think that's delightful. Like that's so much cooler than like a whoa, like a
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
creepy
like
music is fun.
last night, like we both Chad and I heard his music box going off, but it sounded like it was coming from down the hallway. Like the sound was getting thrown, but it wasn't even going off.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did anybody have a camera on you when you made that discovery?
I know.
No.
Was that during the Esta session? So I think your camera was facing the stage.
Yeah. Yeah. So he probably
Yeah.
picked us up talking about it, but
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, it's always the best things that we miss.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it? Right?
Well, it's kind of like the TV
Yeah, that's
going on
true.
and off the first few times.
Yeah. Or the box
Yeah.
at Jericho getting slid across the floor when we're
Oh, I
like on the
so wish we
opposite
would have
end
got
of the
that on
church.
camera.
Yeah.
That'd been
That's
so cool
cool.
if we got that on camera.
I mean, we were a long ways away from it, and it was so heavy that we heard it slide.
Yeah,
I mean, we heard something. We didn't
I
realize
did
what it
because I
was
was
until we
I was
got back
below.
there and then figured out it was a box on the floor.
Oh, how cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to ruin part two of the Jericho uh, visit
No.
too
Uh,
much with spoilers.
Yeah, we're just
Oh,
kind of spoiling stuff at this point.
now, one of my favorite parts of it, was on going on investigations was always they know names.
Yeah,
It's like
Yeah.
they just
that's
know what your name is,
yeah.
and that's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, that's really cool though. It's like that's like very intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, most of the time we don't go in and officially introduce ourselves, so they don't really know they know our name, but yeah, they just know.
But I think even if you did say like, hey, my name is, and they remember it
You
later,
remember?
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
okay
Yeah,
with that. Like I don't feel negative about that at all.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's not creepy in any sense of the thinking about it.
yeah. Probably one of the more uh, intelligent wouldn't capture it entirely, but a spirit's ability to manipulate a deck of cards.
oh,
Chad and I and my wife were on an investigation at the Boyd house in Boyd, Minnesota.
Hmm.
And we sat down in the basement where the older fellow is said to reside. And, and we dealt out a hand of black, and I don't remember the hand dealt, and he had a perfect 21,
Hmm. Hmm.
an ace
Wow.
and a 10.
Yeah. And then the next time we were there, me and a couple that were there sat down there and played with him, and we
yeah,
put a cat ball in his chair. And every time he wanted to get hit, he'd move the cat ball and make it go
Yep.
off.
yeah. That was we were down there for like an hour and a half playing with him. It was
Yeah,
that was
uh,
really fun.
yeah, it was.
That was like
And
my favorite
there
part of
again with
the
intelligence, it's like being able to know to hit that ball to say, I want another card.
Yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
Oh,
Well, these guys are going to ask this question anyway, so I'll beat them to it. Are
Go
there
ahead.
any um, sort of local hotspots for paranormal activity around Joliet besides the prison that
So
you're aware of?
well, it's tough because it's hard to get into these places, as you guys just learned with where you went yesterday. Sometimes it takes a lot.
yeah,
Um, so the prison, unfortunately, has ended their access to the paranormal community. So
really.
that's just not an option anymore, which is sad, to say the least. We have speaking of theaters, local theater that is supposed to be pretty darn haunted. And they do, like, on certain days, they'll kind of open it up to, paranormal tours, but not, it's active, it's being used, so it's not usually opened up to the paranormal. Um, I gotta say, shout out to Jack Chavez. I usually just kind of like hang on to stuff he's got going on with Chicago Paranormal, and when I can go, I go. Because Chicago certainly has its, mobster history, gang
Yeah.
history. Like there's so many areas that people have experiences. I was hearing even the new McDonald's headquarters downstairs or downtown, it's has connections to the Eastland disaster, like when they tore down Harpo theaters, Oprah's theater that was built that got used where all the Eastland victims went. There's apparently a woman's bathroom that you'll still see one of the victims. So like there's so many connections and so many ties. There's of course I think a terribly haunted place that I am literally, it's the only place that scares me is in a local cemetery. But it's a Catholic cemetery, so they don't open it for tours, and it's not open past dark. It is well fenced and well patrolled. So it's one of the major cemeteries. At Resurrection Cemetery. And that's also where we have our Resurrection Mary along, through Willowbrook and everything in Justice. We have a Congress Hotel that actually some local people are at tonight investigating. That's
Yeah,
supposed
I've
to be really
stayed
haunted.
there numerous times, and I definitely get the vibe just walking around the hallways and some of the back stairwells in there. So we're actually, her and Natty and I, my family, we're actually going to be down there in August on vacation.
That's awesome.
Haven't figured out where we're going to stay yet, but Congress is on the short list just
I was
because
going to say, just do the Congress because it's right there. Like,
it's
if
an
you're going to
awesome
stay in the city
location.
and just stay in the city, there's no reason to like not stay in the city because then you have to get back to the city to do
Right.
stuff.
Bring some equipment with us.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. So yeah, no, like Lincoln Park Zoo is supposed to be really haunted, but like they don't open it up for tours. Like there's still the cemeteries that didn't all get moved there. Um, the museums are supposed to be haunted, but they're not like open for tours. So we're just like
Yeah.
pretty darn haunted and spooky around here, but we don't necessarily open for tours.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with the Twin Cities up here. There's a lot of locations, but they don't open them up, or you ask them, they say no, just right off.
Yeah, and it's just they're in operation, so it's hard for them to do something like that, even if they're not anti the paranormal. It's just tough.
Yeah.
A place that is not far away, near and dear to my heart too. I love my jails and prisons is Old Crown Point, the sheriff's house and jail. So it's in Crown Point, Indiana. They open up their tour bookings, I think in March, but like the day they open, they get booked because they do not overcharge. It's a great experience. It's a great location. So it's definitely, that's a great one to go to. Saturdays in May, I think they start being open for the season. They also do a haunted house there at the end of the season too. But I believe Saturdays days you can just go in for tours during the day, but like to actually rent it for a paranormal investigation, I think it's in March that it opens and books pretty fast. You'd have to follow them. On our third season of Into the Obscure, Sandy is going to be, she, runs the site with a board, with certainly people with her. We have her on the show. So she talks about it. And even as we filmed the show on location, there were a few things that happened. So that's a cool site. I always enjoy that. It's not only full of history, but full of ghosts. And you learn a little bit about the history. And that's where Dillinger was and where Dillinger escaped from too. So that's not far from here, but it's just inside of Indiana. If you go a little further south-ish into Indiana, there's Fowler Theater. So that's a little theater, but a super cool place to go visit. It's about 2 hours away from the south suburbs of Chicago. And then you start going out and there starts to be more and more places like Tinker Swiss Cottage. I still haven't made it to Tinker Swiss Cottage, but that's, just an amazing history. The Piano Factory, and I am horrible. I was literally just like talking to them about Nosferatu, but Josiah Henson and Bartel run those tours. So that's more like Rockfordish or Oregon, Illinois. So that's an awesome place to go. So there's a lot of places you just got to drive a little pinch sometimes.
Yeah. No. And I'm always up for a good road trip. So
See, I'm not. I'm like the opposite. I'm like, please don't make me drive. If I like, and then once I do, I'm like, oh, this is fine. I'm already whining. I'll be at Metaparacon in April, and that's in Eau Claire. So it's like 5.5 hours, and I'm already acting like it's like 50 hours of driving. I'm like, well, when I go there, it's not that far.
Yeah,
It's fine. I'll survive it.
in June, we're going to Post Town Elementary and then Waverly Hills and a couple other locations. And that's quite a drive, but it's like, I'm
That's
ready
pretty
for it.
far. Yeah.
But yeah, Waverly, that the booking for that opens at midnight on New Year's Day. So I'll be up
Oh,
at
cool.
midnight on this computer ready to book.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I even just want to go to Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville. Like I was down there for like family stuff years ago, and even just driving past it, I was like, wait a second, but I was there for a wedding, and my husband at the time was not looking to stop at cemeteries, and so I didn't get to go. But so yeah, I didn't get to do that. So one of these days I'll make it back down to Louisville and actually get to see the cool stuff and get to actually enjoy it. Um, Even before, like when I've gone, we've just done like, living people, not creepy things, because like maybe I
Yeah.
had my kids or whatever. So I want
Mhm.
to go. Like, even I just was in St. Louis for non-ghosty things. I got to have a day at the Air Force Base down there. But of course, in the evenings, like ran to the cemetery to Bonaventure and went to Lamp Mansion, actually like did some exploring too. Got to add the spooky stuff in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, usually Chad is a fan of the road, but today I'd say not so much.
Something happened where I lost all my oil pressure. So
Ah,
we had to get a tow into town and get a motel room for the night, seeing it's a Sunday and the mechanic ain't there.
yeah,
So me and my
that's
daughter,
horrible.
yeah, it was messed up, but yeah, we're getting through it. Got the motel room and food next door here, and
You
tomorrow
know,
hopefully we can get her going.
if there's any week to take some PTO, it's probably this week. It's
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So what other interesting projects do you got upcoming?
um upcoming. Well, life is just super busy. So normal life is busy, and I work way too much, and school starts again soon in a couple weeks. So that's
Yeah,
gonna be rough.
unfortunately.
Yeah, for all of us, right?
Yep,
Um,
she has to go back. I got to go back to work. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, I didn't even take any kind of breaks from work, and I have to go back to school starting soon. So and I've taken a break of almost a year. So that's going to be unfun, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then but as far as projects, we continue filming Into the Obscure. Season 3 already started. So season 2 is getting released. Natalie releases it every other week. An episode comes out for season 2. So next episode coming up is going to be Bree Hollingshead. So that's exciting. So every other Thursday, she releases an episode. So there's 7 episodes in the first season. Or second season, I should say. Then the third season, we've already filmed a couple and they're on site. So that's super fun at the Crown Point jail, and we'll keep going with that. We have Days of the Dead is going to be coming up. That Days of the Dead is usually like a horror con that Tribe 3 Productions and Adrian Ibarra started bringing in the paranormal and having like a paranormal showcase, because it makes sense that these worlds would come together.
Yeah.
That would be a great idea. So um, so my friends are already involved in it, and I got to go to this last one as a guest. And I think I actually get to go to the next one in March as like talent. But really, I just want to be the one. I'm like, give me like a NASCAR like shirt just with everybody's names on it. They do cool interviews. Larry Eisler does of Small Town Productions. He does really cool interviews, in photography at the location. Like, tell me about your experience and all of that. And he does such a great job with it. But somebody needs to get out there and circulate and be like, hey, come to the paranormal experience. Come talk about your, experience here with Larry and, and get filmed, be part of the event officially. So I said, please let me do that. Like, don't make me go talk. I don't want to be on a stage. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to like go and interact with people and talk to everybody. So it looks like I get to do that. And I'm really excited. And Amelia Cotter, my one of my cast mates from History Alive, is also going to be there. She is an amazing author and storyteller, so I'm so thrilled to get to spend more time with her, just period, because I love her. But also she'll be at the event too, and I think that's really amazing to bring people into the paranormal experience.
Mm-hmm.
So Days of the Dead is coming. We are History Alive is another project that I am so blessed to be part of. I got a call or a message from the producer over a year ago, and and when he listens to these, he gets all like, "Oh, come on!" But I started to not have that much faith in it because it was taking a while. Because good things, come to those who wait. So he was really working. He was working to make it a great thing, and here I'm like, and then we're not hearing from him. I don't think this is going to be a thing that's going to be good. So we fight kind of like on faith. Amelia and I drove down, to the first location for filming, and we just fell in love with the process and everybody. And a couple weeks later, we filmed at a second location. And walking out at the end of the night, I just, as we're walking, it was actually at the Crown Point Jail was the second location we were at. Walking down the stairs out to our cars, like at midnight. And I said, I turned Darren of DMZ Productions. I turned to him and I said, you just have to make that, like, this has to work. Like, we have to do this. This is so amazing. So it's History Alive is a idea he came up with a while ago. So he has a production company. He does other things that aren't the paranormal, but he's been really interested in the paranormal and history. So two of my absolute loves for such a long time. So 2018, 19, so 19, 19 into 20 is more relevant. He actually got it to come together with some of the cast members that are still part of it and some people that are no longer part of it. He lived in Kentucky at the time, like, not far from Louisville. And they actually got to make their first episode. They were going into the second. They were moving along. It was becoming a real show that was doing things. But then that was 2019 into 2020. So everything came to a screeching halt.
Yep.
He moved up closer to Chicago and, kind of had to regroup. So here it is. So 2023-ish, earlier 2023, he said, okay, I think we're ready to start doing this again, but we have to kind of look at the cast again because, people maybe that are based more up here, people, the people that were in it originally couldn't continue for various reasons. And so Amelia and I and Pete Grice became a part of it. And two of the original cast members, Lee and Jamie, then they said, we will happily drive up. We love this so much. So it started again this fall. So he has meetings with networks coming up in, oh my God, like a month or two. So I'm so, hopefully we get to do this for real, and really get to pursue the show. So we're so excited about that. And so History Alive, hopefully I get to do all the time and get to work on all the time. And that's how I'll use all of my PTO and all of my fun time this year. Fingers crossed, filming Into the Obscure all the time. And so season 2, we welcomed my new co-host, Rob Johnson, and he like led the paranormal tours at the prison. He's been in the paranormal. He's been a paranormal investigator for decades, back when I was just kind of playing around in Bachelor's Grove, as a teenager. He was like seriously doing this, and, and an urban explorer and a photographer. He's just an incredible person. And I met him when we were volunteering at the prison together, cleaning up, doing stuff. And I remember when I met him, I was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I don't and if you guys ever meet him, you might say the same thing too. Like, he's, no filter. He is, he is a heavy machine operator. He is just not who I thought I'd spend every Saturday with. Right. And nothing negative, just,
Yeah.
just. And before I knew it, like eventually I was like, wait, this is one of my best friends, you know, and we would talk all the time. So when it was time to have a new co-host, my husband, who's, you know, we're all, you know, close, and he said, well, of course it's Rob. And I was like, oh my God, of course it is. Like Rob actually named the show and we are coming up with a name, like talking to him. And, you know, this kind of him and I talking is how Into the Obscure was born. And it was crazy that he never was the co-host. So it made sense that he was. And so it's so cool getting to like talk to my best friend for, you know, an hour for the show and getting to interact with our guests. So that's so much fun. And so we have that Obscurity of Maximum Security. We're on like a baby hiatus. So that is Mike Johnson. All these Johnsons are not related to each other. So Mike Johnson, he was a CO for a very long time at Old Joliet Prison, or when it was Joliet Correctional Center, you know, when it was still an active prison. And he would lead guard tours with another one of his, you know, like former coworkers. They would named Ron. They would lead guard tours at the prison. And when the purge happened, they were also gone and the guard tours ended. And it was so devastating on a lot of levels that we weren't there anymore, but also devastating that this living history was not being told and not being preserved. Even if we weren't recording it, as long as he was leading these tours and telling people his stories, it was still, you know, carrying forward. People were hearing the stories. I couldn't imagine a world where these stories didn't get preserved, didn't get told anymore. So we started just doing, like, they're on TikTok and YouTube, you know, just we're doing, you know, him talking about it. And he's so funny because he'll be like, I don't have much to say, you know, and he'll really think he's going to talk for about a minute. And I'm like, and I say, okay, we got to cap it at 10 because TikTok used to cap me at 10. Like now we can go up to 60 minutes, but like, you know, it used to cap me at 10 minutes. And I would have to divide up the episodes. He would just keep talking and talking because he has such amazing stories and he's such a cool storyteller. So I think I still have, speaking of going back and editing, I still have some episodes to dig out and edit, going way back, but life caught up and I didn't edit them. But he said, I think I ran out of stories. And I was like, I don't know if that's true. I don't think you ran out of stories. I think we just kind of like came to it for now. So we're on like little baby hiatus now, but you know, anytime he comes up with anything new, we will have more episodes. But I think he just has the coolest stories. I always say my favorite, but I think, again, kind of like my ghost stories of ghosts at the prison, Mike's stories, I think it depends on the day what I come up with is my favorite, but there's a great story about underwear and soup. You know, so his stories are all, you know, the stories at a maximum security prison. And that's why I fell in love. I'm an only child. I got to go to work sometimes with my mom because I would just say, I don't want to go to daycare today. And she would take me to work. And that was an amazing experience and like really shaped my life. Who would have thought? We talk about this sometimes, like just that she worked in Joliet, and because we didn't live in Joliet, she worked in Joliet and I would sometimes go with her. And that really was, you know, shaped the trajectory of my life. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting now. I wouldn't be doing any of this actually, which is crazy. But she would drive. I was little. We would drive past that prison when it was still an active prison. We would follow the buses from the courthouse, not on purpose, but just incidentally. And we would see the inmates getting out of the buses to go to processing. And you would see all the signs saying, don't pick up hitchhikers. Like that fascinated me. First of all, who's picking up hitchhikers? Ew. But also who, like, it's so crazy. It looks like a castle. You're driving past it, these thick walls, you see the guards in the turrets with their guns, and this is just a normal road. You are driving down a normal road, like through town. It's wild to me that it was still just functioning. Even the next closest prison, Stateville, it's still set back. You can see it, but like it's set back. This is not at all set back. It's like right there on the road. So that's so crazy to me, like to this day. You know, and the world grew up around the prison too, right? But like if you go, there's a Supermax in like Thompson, Illinois, or whatever, by Thompson Causeway. You are not just getting to that from the road, no problemo. You know, when they build them now, they're so far back, they're so isolated, they're so separated. There's no separation here. So I think that driving past there when I was little really like, again, it shaped the trajectory of my life. I just was fascinated by what goes on behind walls, getting behind things, having that access. I think that's why I became a critical care nurse. Like that's, and I've moved past the bedside now because you get sick of that after a while, but uh because we all do, but it really informed like so many decisions I made through my life, like that fascination at a young age. And so we have the obscurity of maximum security, but little hiatus. And I think that's it. So I Days of the Dead in March, Meta Paracon in April in Eau Claire. And I'll start kind of talking about that more on Facebook coming up here. And I don't know what else. We'll see. But again, I go back to school. I have to finish my master's, and I would like to get it done this year, which is really lame and really cuts into the fun stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like I work in a middle school, and all the kids in the program I work in, they're just like fascinated. They're like, "Do you have new ghost
Yeah.
stories? Do you have anything going on?" It's like they want to see pictures, they want to see videos. It's like, when's your first YouTube video coming out? So they're like all subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow me on TikTok to, you know, see what's going on. And like one thing I'm trying to get set up for this next year is so at a location, not for sure where yet, but doing like a junior investigation where we, tell kids about what we do and then do like a mini investigation with them.
Have you you should, and I know he's busy too or whatever, but Pete Greist, he does it at the high school. He's actually a police officer, but so he's like the resource officer at the school, at the high school, but he does this with the high school students. So
Okay.
he could be, if you connect with him, he would be like
Okay.
a great resource. I'm not promising anything, he's gonna be
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
calm down as I like I say, talk to him. He's
Yeah.
got you. But like he does that in real life with high school
Okay.
students. And his stories, like they're just touching. Like it's so cool. And the because the different kids, right? You work in a school, not everybody talks to each other, right? Everybody
Right.
has their cliques and their groups, but you take them on an investigation and, but we also know too, right? You do something with people and you get to know them on a different level. Now your relationships are different. So it's not only I say it's cool, like with Pete, oh, that you're exposing them to the paranormal. That's so cool. And it is. But I think what's cooler is that peopling these kids that never were talking to each other before start
Right.
interacting and having these great relationships with each other. And it just really changes the face of, the social structure too. So I think that's amazing too. So he has like, I think he like could help you with templates like for permission slips and, stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think it'd be really cool because like, I have some of my students, they'd be interested in going, and then, you know, I don't know, I think it'd be cool because it's like since I started doing this, it's like I've had like 50 kids come up to me like, "Oh, Project Fear, what's that?" So like wear a Project Fear sweatshirt to school, or one of her
Mhm.
Sam and Colby sweatshirts, and all these kids know who Sam and Colby are. They're like, "Well, why are you wearing that?" I go, "Because I do what they do, but not on
Mhm.
a bigger level." But so then they just want to hear all these stories.
Yeah.
And it's like from the investigations I've already done this year, I'm out of stories. So I need new stories.
You can tell them again. It's
Oh, I know. It's like,
okay.
or try to think of something else that I've experienced, or like, I just don't want to make anything up.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So
so for young people and well, adults even who don't have access to a Pete or future Matthew, and apart from say ghost tours that are guided or um, podcasts or television shows, sort of presentation media, what do you think is a good way for people to start investigating and experiencing the paranormal and getting into the obscure?
I think, I mean, go to places. I think that's a huge, I think like when I was younger, and I think maybe for a lot of us when we were younger, it was the default you go to places because what else are you doing, right? Now as even an adult, but like I really feel for kids. My kids are young adults now. There's not so much of that go out. Their teenage years were defined by COVID, that time that everybody was like, don't go out, you stay in. So that's the big challenge is just go to a place. And for me, I have abilities, but I never cultivated them. I always took for granted in my mom's side of the family, people can see and hear things, we can, and we have like some intuitive, but we never leaned into it. Like as a family, it was never a thing. And I never personally really leaned into it. I always say when I have more free time, that's what I'll do. I'll take it, work with a medium and really learn to tap into it. But I'm good at shutting it down. I'm not necessarily always good at accessing it, but really go to the places, go to a place, so go, if you have a place in your area that's maybe kind of known for something, go and just sit in the space. For me, I don't even need equipment, not because I can necessarily feel things, but just I think a lot of us can if you lean into it and just, spend some time in the quiet, spend some time. There's Therese Williams, follow her too. She's wonderful. She talks a lot about, like, she's a great one to follow. She talks a lot about just get into nature, like get out there. There's spirits everywhere. It's not just in that one haunted house or haunted prison or whatever. There's stuff everywhere. This world is old, there's a lot of spirits over time, and just start tapping into what you can feel, what's around you. Also, I just love the urban exploring thing. So start connecting, sometimes even like if you connect with like urban exploring and photography groups in your
Mhm.
area, that's a good way to get into locations. I recently got to go someplace again nearby that I really liked. And somebody there said, oh, are you doing investigation? Or, it was broad daylight, which you can investigate broad daylight. I'm not saying you can't,
Yeah.
but I was like, it didn't even dawn on me because I'm just running around exploring and taking pictures and hanging out with my friends. So, but get in the spaces, immerse yourself in the world and start,
Yeah.
it's not about demons. It's not about the crazy expression you can make for your YouTube thumbnail. It's about experiencing and, just kind of having those experiences. And then if a REM pod calls to you, great, get yourself one, if that's where you want to start. I'm a big so everybody, if you ask me like, what's your favorite piece of paranormal equipment? For me, it's my phone because it's always with me. You can take pictures, you could record things, you could take video, and you can get things like a gross breath when you're someplace. So I love that. I have a little tape recorder situation. It's not tape, it's digital, but I am so not good at it and I don't use it enough that to me to bring that on an investigation is just like an impediment because it's just I'm going to trip over myself trying to use it and I'll sometimes try. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to really use that like a professional, and I'll try and I'll listen, and you rarely capture things, right? Like there's so much downtime with it, but for me, it's just so much more irritating. I would rather I got a 1 terabyte phone when I got a phone because I was like, I'm just going to keep recording stuff and I'll listen to it. So, I love a good necrophonic app. Sorry, like I do. So I and I think that's because I tend to be a more verbal person and I'd rather talk and listen than watch or wait for a light or whatever. So there's you got a world of resources in your hands with
Right.
pictures and everything too. Um, and just be on the listen, like for when you get to do something cool. Sometime around Halloween, there's going to be like night cemetery tours. Just tag along, like go to the cool things, do the things, start reaching out to resources in your area. but every area has its Resurrection Mary or its Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. Every place has something like that, or it's bridge that's haunted. Just start going to those places and having experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah, no hate with the Necrophonic app. We're big fans.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I just, it's like
We go
I've
to
had stuff happen with it. So I'm like, you know what? It's right there. It's on my phone. It's great.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we go
To
to a
to
lot
the
of places where radio stations are few and far between, and so using a traditional spirit box just isn't going to happen. So the
So
Mhm.
Necrophonic app saves day in those places.
so a spirit box, I hadn't experienced it. I'm a little biased. So first of all, I hate a spirit box when a bunch of people are around it trying to listen to it. I don't know. Like, I think that's the most irritating. Like, it's just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And all these people, it said this, it's just really noisy and
Yeah.
chaotic. And I,
Yeah.
I don't know. It stresses me out. Like, it's anxiety inducing. So I like the Estes method for that because it just kind of cleans it up and we're down to one person, right? So at least that
Yep.
kind of helps it. But I had an experience one time we were at the prison and it was like a celebrity investigation. It was a cool, everybody was vibing. It was a great time. And we were in the hospital and we thought we were talking to somebody. It was very clear talking about people dying and this and that. Like it was a whole story. And this all really tracked for being in the hospital at the prison. And it made so much sense. And we really, everybody kind of said, oh my God, that's the clearest anything has ever been. That is the most amazing. Everybody really came out feeling great about it. And then for some reason, something came across on it. Like even after we kind of walked out, I think it got kept on. Something happened that we're like, this, I don't know. We checked the news. There was like a huge car accident. Like it was literally a huge news event that was all over every station that the spirit box would be tapping into.
Mhm.
People died. It was a whole thing. And we just heard because every news station was saying the same thing. It just sounded like it was intelligent, it was consistent and it sounded like it was answering our questions, right? Like it was so perfect.
Yeah.
And so after that, I was like, oh man, oh, so I little grain of salt with it sometimes now because and it just happened right at that moment. Something happened. But that's right. Like, I think that's something we kind of trust as a spirit box usually.
Yeah.
But we learn you have to be a little skeptical of everything you're going to do and actually like
Mhm.
take it with a grain of salt.
Definitely.
And for equipment, I like using equipment, but then again, I don't because it always seems
Mhm.
like at times you're gonna have equipment that's gonna act up on you or not work
Mhm.
properly. And like going into this last investigation we had last night, I was gonna bring my Phasm cam with, and for whatever reason, it will not turn on unless it's hooked up to my computer. Some setting got changed in there, which I can't change. So now it's like can't figure out what's going on with it. So I'm like, no, it's just sitting in a drawer.
See,
Yeah.
and when we would do the tours, like, and a public tour is obviously like a different situation than your group going, right?
Yeah.
It's a different vibe. You don't have the same, but people, it's if there are public tours, that is a much cheaper and much more accessible way to get into sites. So people would come on the public tours, even just as a group with their group, right? So but I would watch so many people when you're leading the tour. You get to kind of sit back and watch. This is your home. This is your, location. You know it even with your eyes closed. So you have a very different perspective, as you're going through that evening, as opposed to the person that's brand new to the area and hoping to get something.
Mhm.
So we would watch so many people come in with all of their equipment and they're all, holding it and they're all looking at it. They're all staring at it and they're obsessed with, is it working? Is it, oh, I didn't bring my computer to plug it into. Now I have this problem, like all of this stuff they're carrying around and bringing. And because I'm at my home location running the tour, I don't have all this stuff with me and I'm just able to look around. And I would sit there and the cafeteria is not what you call it. It's the inmate dining room, but the cafeteria is, what the location called it incorrectly, but sitting in the inmate dining room, you could sit there and you could see like there was something that in the gym, they were newer buildings, they were connected. You could see them like it was just kind of like shadows. You could see things. And even people that were brand new to it could see it. It wasn't just us. You have to be able to see ghosts, I guess, to be able to see it, like shadows, like big shadows. But people would be so busy staring at their equipment and listening for it and doing all this stuff that they wouldn't see anything. They're busy looking down, they're busy staring at a screen. And there's one couple of women that one tour I remember. I just remember them so clearly. We got to the end. They didn't even go into Death Row, which is my favorite location of the whole campus. They didn't even go in because they're so disgusted by then because it's not actually haunted and they didn't see anything. And it's not haunted here. And none of this worked. And like they were mad. They were outside just like angry. And I didn't say anything. That was their business to work out, like their emotions to handle. But like, it was just so funny to me because then I was like close to them most of the night. And I'm thinking, well, when we're in the IDR, I saw this. When we're in the galleries, I saw it. Like, and even another guest like said, oh, somebody's walking up there. I said, absolutely. So like even other guests were seeing things, having experiences. They were so busy looking at their screens that they were like angry at the end saying it's not even haunted.
Right. Like back in,
Ma'am.
was it July we were at Waverly?
Yeah.
Yeah,
End
July
of,
we were
end of
at
July.
end of July we were at Waverly and we were like on the public junior investigation. There was like 40 some people there and it's like, we didn't get much that night, but again, it's the experience of being there. But then we were in certain areas trying to do our stuff and other people just come walk in, not a care that we were there. And it's like, I said that morning when we left, I go, we need to go back and do Waverly right with just like a small team and not like 40, 50 other people there because it was just overwhelming.
See, and I like the idea that from my perspective, you did it right already, that you already went, you got to get that like overwhelming whoosh of new place, new experience. Yep. Oh my God. It's because it's so fun to go to these places. Like and then you're going to go back with a different perspective and not a ton of people around you. And I think that's amazing. Even just like from an urban exploring standpoint, like there's a factory that we get to go to that's not very far away, an abandoned factory. And the first time I went, oh my God, I remember the first time I went, like that whoosh of emotions and the colors are so bright and it's so exciting. And I just got to run and see the next thing. You don't even have time to look at something. And then to go back to it, it's still exciting, but it's a different kind of exciting. And you get to actually look at it. You get to actually see. And that's, to me, so valuable. I think that first time you're just so excited to be there. It's just so, and I think for the spirits too, when they get to, hey, you're back. Okay, let's interact instead of just that first time you're coming in for a couple hours and you're going to leave.
Yeah, not too far from where I live, there's an old ammunition plant that I've urban explored and I do photography as well. So it's like,
how fun.
Just walk through there, take pictures of it. And then, I've been back a couple times since then. I even did a photo shoot there, a senior session, and this daughter and she had her mom come with, and she found out that her grandpa actually worked at the ammunition plant. So doing portraits there where your grandpa worked.
That's awesome.
Now you can't really get in the place because they fence it off because it's like deteriorating really bad. But just like seeing all the graffiti and the history there, and it's just like
you kind of need a couple visits to absorb everything.
It's a huge area. It's probably 50, 60, 70 acres of land and like multiple buildings, and I think they're going to redevelop it now into housing or something. But
interesting.
Yeah, and to speak to those people who didn't have an experience or said that or claimed that it wasn't haunted, in my experience, you'd be hard pressed to show me a place that doesn't have at least some spirit activity going on.
Exactly.
Sorry, everybody. Your house is probably haunted, but if
Yeah.
you haven't noticed it, it's not a problem.
Well, and that's, yeah, there's, the paranormal community has no shortage of drama and excitement on any given day on social media. But that's a crazy thing to me too when people go into sites that happened not long ago and saying, because I didn't get something, it is not haunted. That's wild to me because, I've just personally experienced people saying something didn't happen for them. It is not haunted while I stood there while things happened. So it's such a funny, like, how do you prove that negative? Like, because you didn't have an experience.
Right.
Like
Well, I've
I
been
even
to
say, like with my house, I don't have experiences, but I think I have. I'm just really good at not, I don't want to do that in my house. I'm not looking for that. It's not a situation that I want to interact with, whatever. So we just coexist and I don't talk to anybody here. That's on the other side. And that's okay. I'm not gonna like angrily say my house is not haunted because I haven't had experiences. I just don't have anything I could tell you about.
right. Well, like since March, I've been to like, probably 20 locations, and not all of them I've had experiences. So it's
Mhm.
like,
And that's okay.
yep, it's like go back and see what happens the next time.
Yeah, like it wasn't for you that day, and that's all
Yep.
right.
It's not going to take away from me wanting to go back or keep doing this.
Mm-hmm. Because in the end, it's just like a cool thing that you got to go to this cool place and see cool things.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's places that just gets bombarded so much get with people coming through that I'm sure the spirits get tired of answering question after question.
Well, could you imagine, like, you're just busy chilling, on the other side, you're dead, and people just keep showing up every Saturday night yelling at you, what year is it?
Yeah,
How did you die? Like, I'm not
yeah,
answering that anymore. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
You just go enjoy the scenery, sir.
Yep.
Just, we're not doing this today. But sometimes they're going to vibe with somebody and they're gonna be happy to
Hmm.
answer.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, there's been places I've been to that yeah, with like the REM pod and music box, they will not touch them. But
Mhm.
yeah, they'll cooperate really good with flashlights or dowsing rods.
Oh, Natalie knows that all too well.
Yeah.
I lost money because of her and the dowsing rods.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Mm-hmm.
He bet a spirit that he couldn't make the dowsing rods hit her in the head, and
Oh,
all of a sudden she got hit in the head.
oh.
Yeah.
So I only lost $1, but hey, a bet's a bet. So I left $1.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not be making bets or deals with spirits we're not very intimately acquainted with.
uh,
But at least you got him to do something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just $1 in your soul. That's it.
mhm.
I have no idea what's going on upstairs. We have a spirit running around upstairs, and my daughter. All you can hear is thumping on the ceiling above us. It's like, what is going on up there?
Huh.
Being loud.
So if there wasn't anybody in the house, I would be, let's get out the equipment, but it's just my other daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the spirits in my house are all having opinions about this podcast as it's being recorded, but I'm not focusing on them right now, so they can have their opinions and make their
Yep.
comments.
And I see your cat's gone. You had a cat in the background for a little bit.
Oh, did I?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Made a brief appearance.
I don't know if you guys have noticed. That's Nell back there. And she's the only haunted doll that's behind me. There's some haunted books in that barrister case, but
Okay.
the rest of the room is littered with haunted objects and haunted dolls.
Do they do things?
Uh, well, how do you mean do things?
Like, does anything ever move? Do they, like, when you say they're haunted, how do you know they're haunted?
So I have a rule in my house. If you're going to stay in my house, you're going to behave. You're not going to throw things at people. Um, you're not going to like mess with the electronics. One thing they really like to play with are these little twist lights.
Huh.
And so, like, Hilda and Helen here are wearing theirs on a string,
Okay.
but these rubber things are kind of like a stopper so that they're not wearing the batteries out all the time. And they come through in the Estes method, and I know each one of their stories pretty well. But I don't want any more activity than something I could attribute to the cats in my house. That's kind of the limit for, like, don't break things.
No.
If something breaks and there's a cat standing next to it, that's fine. That's the cat's business, but
Next, unrelated
them's the
question
rules.
to that, but it's in your background. What kind of plant is that behind you? Is it a Hoya or a philodendron?
This plant here,
Yes.
that is a wax plant,
Okay.
and there are other names for it, but I can't think of them right now.
I just had to know. It
And
was like
then
a,
that is a then there's a very young, not fully, just beginning to be formed bonsai in that black box.
right on. I have plants all over. You can't see them because I turn the grow lights off for this, but plenty of plants around. Work is where I keep most of my plants. But I always like to be like, what is that? It's very important to know for me.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I don't know. You probably can't see it in my background, but in the far corner, I got a Chicago poster up on
You
it.
do. Yeah, no, you could totally see it.
Oh yeah, no, you see that.
And I got that back in 2011, I think.
Oh,
Oh, I know Chicago like the back of my hand. I've had family down there forever, and I learned how to drive in Chicago, and yeah, just my favorite place to go.
mine too, that's
Yeah,
I haven't always, sometimes I lived in Michigan for a while, but I've lived in the like south suburbs my whole life, but now I'm more southwest. But um yeah, no, my one of my favorite, I forgot, we always used to do this with my kids when they were little. We would go, or younger, we would go into the city, just like take the train and spend the day. And I kind of forgot about that. So we went and did that this past week. So I always
yeah. Every
enjoy
time
that.
I go to Chicago, I always stay in the city. It may sound weird, but I feel safer downtown Chicago than I do downtown Minneapolis. I don't know why it is, but
Yeah, no, I love downtown Chicago. That's yeah, no, and if there's ever anything, I would much rather just spend the night down there than try to get home that night.
yeah, there's always something to do down there. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one, she loves Chicago
I
too.
love Chicago.
I've only been through it a few times. I've never really stopped.
Next time you got to stop.
Yeah,
It's a good time.
I'll have to.
Get some pizza and some Garrett's popcorn. Go on the giant Ferris wheel.
Yeah, we do that every couple years, like, and just I make sure we do, and we just went, and it was fun because it was foggy, so it was a cool day.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was super foggy up here today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, somebody up there was posting about it, like saying it's been days of just like being foggy up there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know what's
yesterday
between.
was sunny, but yeah, it's been quite a few days of fog.
Oh yeah, it's foggy here.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
We
don't
went
know
into
what.
town for dinner, and when we came back, about quarter-mile visibility in places.
Wow. Well, the cold front's coming, so it's going to shift.
You know,
Yeah.
Hmm.
Winter is going to be here. Unfortunately, we've been very spoiled. It's been
we
so
have.
warm here.
Well, yeah, I was walking across the parking lot at the motel here to go to the restaurant. There's earthworms out on the pavement. It's
Oh,
like, are you
geez.
kidding me?
Yeah,
Right?
no, it was like raining all day today. It's warm. It smells kind of like spring more than anything. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what's been happening lately. Like it stays warm for a while and then it gets nice and chilly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up, talk about?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else either.
Well, and before we're done, Natalie, you are the cutest and I love your hair.
Thank you.
And she is
That's all I
fearless.
got.
She loves going on investigations.
Hmm.
She's I don't know how many have you been on now? 13, 14 maybe?
Um, I kind of
Yeah.
can't
She's
think
probably
right
been
now.
on like 13 or
I'm
14.
too tired for that.
Wow.
Oh, I have plenty of footage that says that she's not fearless.
Yeah.
Oh, she is
Yeah,
But
fearless.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
It's
if you're
okay if you sometimes run.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
do get scared, that's fine. But for you to be able to go to these places like Waverly Hills, come on. How many 11-year-olds can say they've been to Waverly Hills? I don't know. I probably don't know any.
You do.
Not too many.
Yeah.
What?
No.
okay. So with that, Kara, if you would tell us a few places that our viewers could find you, and
So
that also kind of helps me put your links under the video.
for sure. So the easiest, and I post a plenty. So the easiest is at Kara Phillip. Find me on Facebook, KaraPhilip. Um, on TikTok, Kara Phillip Official, and Instagram, Kara Phillip Official. You can find our show Into the Obscure on Paraflix. If you use the code Obscure25, you save 25% on the subscription. And Into the Obscure is on Paraflix, and you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Into the Obscure. We also have Hella Obscura is our kind of where a lot of stuff started. It's like a photography group, like urban exploring, kind of like we made it after we were banned from the prison. We made it just as a thing to like kind of stick together as like a friend group and photographers and have something to kind of gather around. So Hella Obscura on Facebook and Instagram. History Alive is the project that we're working on. So you could find History Alive on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
All right, sounds great.
Thanks
All
for
right, I'll
having
try to
me.
put most of those
Yep.
links in the description. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
you.
I share like crazy anyway. So even if you just if you go to me, follow me, I'll be sharing it.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Well, have a good rest of the night.
Yep.
Thank you
Have a
and good
great
luck with
night.
your car.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
I
you.
hope it goes quick and not too expensive. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah. Both.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a
Yep.
wonderful
Thank you.
Sunday night.
Yep. You
You
too.
too.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.
This has been Nightmare Stories of the Other Side, a production of Nightmare Explorers.